Arya was born into a world she could not see. She never knew colors, never watched the sky change from blue to orange at sunset, never saw her mother's smile or her father's tired eyes. Darkness was all she knew, quiet, endless, constant. But inside that darkness was something glowing, something only she could feel. Music. When other children played with toys, Arya played with sound. She would sit beside the old upright piano in the corner of their living room, running her fingers along the wooden edges as if it were alive. She couldn't see the dust on it, couldn't see the chipped paint, but she could feel its heartbeat through the keys. Her mother used to guide her hand gently, placing each finger on the correct note. "This one is C," she would whisper softly, "and beside it is D. Listen, feel it." Arya never read music sheets. She memorized sound like others memorize names. Just once was enough. If she heard a melody, she could play it again almost perfectly. Not because she tried to impress anyone, but because music spoke to her like the world never did. She heard details others missed. The way a note trembled at the end, the tiny breath between chords, the soft vibration of the strings beneath the wood. Every sound was a picture to her. Notes were colors she could understand. Rhythms were shapes she could hold. Music was light in her darkness, but life outside the piano was not gentle. Arya grew up in a small neighborhood where people whispered more than they spoke. They pitied her blindness. They treated her like a fragile flower, something to protect but never to expect from. They said her dreams were too big for someone who couldn't see. Poor girl, some sighed. She should learn something practical, others said. She can't live a normal life. But Arya was not looking for a normal life. She wanted a meaningful one. Every evening, after her father finished work, he would sit silently while Arya played. He never needed light to enjoy her music. Her piano filled the room with warmth stronger than any lamp. Sometimes he cried quietly, not because she was blind, but because she was brilliant. Arya never saw those tears, but she heard them. She could hear everything, even hope. She practiced for hours each day, her fingers gliding across the keys until they were sore. She made mistakes, yes, but she learned quickly. She could not see the keys, but she felt the distance between them like a map inside her hands. Her heart knew where to go. The piano became her world. She learned to express everything through it, happiness like dancing high notes, sadness like slow deep chords, dreams like flowing waterfalls of sound. When she played, she wasn't blind. She wasn't small. She wasn't limited. She was limitless. But talent hidden inside walls is like a bird trapped in a small cage. It sings beautifully, but the world never hears it. One afternoon, her parents received a letter that would change everything. A music showcase was coming to the city, and the judge would be none other than a world-famous pianist known for brilliance and pride. A golden opportunity, the kind that appeared once in a lifetime. Arya sat quietly as her father read the letter aloud. The showcase invited participants of all ages, anyone who believed they had talent. The winner would receive mentorship, training, and a stage many only dreamed of. Arya's heart raced. She wanted to go, but fear whispered into her mind, sharp, cold, cruel. What if they laugh at you? What if they say you don't belong? What if blindness is all they see? She held her hands together tightly, feeling the roughness of her fingertips shaped by music, not pity. Her mother knelt beside her and spoke with a voice warm enough to fight fear. "You may not see the world, Arya," she said softly, "but the world will see you." Arya's lips trembled. "Do you really think I can do it?" Her mother lifted her hand and placed it on the piano keys. "You already do, every day." That night, Arya sat alone at the piano long after everyone slept. She played not one song but many, soft ones, powerful ones, songs filled with questions and answers, songs that felt like prayers. She wasn't practicing, she was preparing. Preparing for a world that may not welcome her, preparing for laughter, preparing for rejection, but also preparing for the small possibility, the precious chance that someone might listen, someone might hear the truth in her music. Someone might realize that blindness was not her weakness, it was her brilliance. And as she pressed the final note, letting it echo into the darkness of the room, Arya whispered into the silence, "I am ready." Even if she did not fully believe those words, her heart did. Everything she had lived, every sound, every doubt, every night spent with the piano instead of sleep, was leading her toward a stage, a moment, a destiny she could not see, but could feel. And that feeling was enough. The morning of the showcase arrived quietly, as if even the sun was holding its breath for her. Arya woke before dawn, unable to sleep from excitement and fear. She sat at the piano one last time that morning, letting her fingers touch the keys softly like greeting an old friend. She didn't play, she just listened. The silence of the room was comforting, like a warm blanket. She felt the smooth surface of the piano beneath her hands and whispered, "I will make you proud today." Her father walked into the room, footsteps slow and heavy with emotion. He didn't speak for a moment, he simply placed his hand on her shoulder, steady and warm. "It's time," he said softly. Arya stood, holding her cane in one hand and her dream in the other. Her mother gently placed a hand on her cheek, then helped guide her fingers to the polished wooden violin case. But no, it wasn't a violin today. It was the piano waiting for her elsewhere, a stage waiting for her touch. She wore a simple white dress, nothing fancy, but it made her feel like light. Her hair was brushed smooth, falling over her shoulders like dark silk. When they stepped outside, the morning air was cool, crisp, filled with the scent of winter. Arya heard the wind stir the trees, cars passing in the distance, children's voices somewhere far off. Sounds painted the world for her, and this morning the world felt wide and alive. The music hall was far from her home. Her father guided her carefully through streets, their footsteps echoing together on the sidewalk. Arya counted each step without thinking 1, 2, 3, grounding herself against her racing heartbeat. When they finally arrived, she sensed it immediately. The hall was massive. She could hear the sighs in the way sound bounced off distant walls and how voices overlapped like waves. The air smelled of polished wood, fabric, perfume, and something else, anticipation. Her father leaned close. This is it. Arya held her breath, so many people, so many sounds. She felt the floor beneath her feet, smooth marble at the entrance, then carpet as they walked deeper inside. Each step forward felt heavier than the last, but she did not let go of her father's arm. As they entered the main lobby, whispers began. That must be her. Is she really blind? How will she even find the keys? Arya didn't see their faces, but she felt their eyes like sharp needles. She kept her head straight, listening to footsteps, voices, breathing. The world-famous pianist, Maestro Brentford, stood near the entrance with his assistants. She could feel the silence around him, the kind of silence powerful people carry. Shoes clicked as everyone stepped aside for him. Then she heard him laugh softly, not kindly at all. So this is the girl, he asked, his voice smooth like polished glass. Blind, and yet she thinks she can play. The audience chuckled under their breath. Arya's heart squeezed painfully. She hadn't played a note yet, but already she was being judged. She wanted to disappear, to run back home and hide beneath her piano like a small bird retreating into a nest. But her mother's words returned like a soft melody. You may not see the world, Arya, but the world will see you. She straightened her back. Maestro Brentford walked closer, his shoes tapping against the floor. He stopped right in front of her. She couldn't see his expression, but she could feel the weight of his gaze. Well then, he said sharply, let's hope your ears work better than your eyes. A painful silence followed. Her father's hand tightened around hers, steady but trembling. She felt his anger, his hurt, but also his trust. Arya lifted her chin. I don't need eyes to feel music, she said softly. The words were small, but they carried strength. Some in the hall shifted uncomfortably. Others murmured, surprised by her courage. Maestro Brentford did not respond. He simply turned and continued walking, his footsteps cold like winter stone. Arya followed her father to the backstage area where musicians prepared, tuning instruments, warming up, adjusting clothing. She heard confident fingers dancing across violin strings, fast piano scales played with surgical precision. They sounded flawless, trained, polished. She felt small, but she also felt ready. A stage assistant approached gently. You're number 12, she said. Be prepared. When your number is called, walk toward the sound of the announcer's voice. Arya nodded. Her father squeezed her shoulder one last time before leaving the backstage area. He wasn't allowed to stay with her, she must go alone. His footsteps faded slowly. She listened until they disappeared completely. She was truly alone now, just her hands, her heart, her gift. Time moved strangely, fast and slow at the same time. Performers went on stage and came back with applause or disappointment. Arya sat silently, her hands resting in her lap, counting breaths. 12 performers, she was last. She waited through 10s, then 11s, then. A voice echoed through the hall, contestant number 12, Arya. The world stood still. This was it. She rose to her feet. Her cane tapped gently against the floor as she moved, one step, then another. Toward the stage, toward the same pianist who doubted her, toward the crowd who waited to laugh, toward the piano she had never seen but always known. Arya walked toward the stage, guided only by sound, the soft hum of lights above her, the distant breath of the audience, the faint echo of the announcer's footsteps. She moved slowly but with purpose, her cane tapping gently against the polished floor. Every tap was like a heartbeat reminding her she was still here, still standing, still brave. When she reached the final step leading to the stage, she paused. The air changed, larger, colder, heavier, as if the room itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what a blind girl could possibly offer. The announcer took her hand quietly and guided her to the center of the stage. The brightness of the spotlight warmed her skin, and though she could not see it, she felt its shape like a circle of heat around her. She could sense hundreds, maybe thousands of eyes staring, curious, doubtful, some amused, some impatient. She heard whispers. Poor thing, she'll embarrass herself. What a risky idea. She's blind, how will she know the keys? A soft wave of laughter rippled through the hall. Arya's fingers tightened around her cane. Maestro Brentford stepped forward from the front row, his shoes clicking sharply against the floor. His voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Well," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "show us what the darkness has taught you." Laughter grew stronger, not cruel in everyone, but loud enough to hurt. Arya did not turn her head, she did not defend herself. She did not tremble, she simply breathed, because she knew words could not prove anything. Only music could. A stage assistant guided her to the pianist's bench. Her fingers felt for the smooth wooden edge, sliding carefully along the seat before she sat. The assistant placed her hand onto the piano gently, like placing a bird back into its nest. The piano was beautiful. She felt it immediately. Cool keys beneath her fingertips, elegant curves under her palm, a soft wooden scent rising like memory. This instrument had been touched by masters. Now it waited for her. The entire hall was silent, not respectful, but expectant, ready to witness failure. Maestro Brentford leaned back with folded arms, amused. Arya lowered her head for a moment. She could hear her own heartbeat, fast like rushing wings. Her hands hovered over the keys but did not press. In that long still second, she remembered everything. Her mother's warm hands guiding hers. Her father's silent tears as she played. The quiet nights alone with nothing but music to hold on to. The whispers, the doubt, the darkness, the stubborn, unbreakable hope. She lifted her chin and placed her fingers on the first note. Softly like a feather landing. The sound was gentle, almost shy but clear, pure. A single note that fell into the silence like a drop of water into stillness. The crowd did not laugh now, they waited. She moved to the next key, slow but sure. Then another, and another. The melody took shape like light forming inside darkness, slow, delicate, growing. Each note felt like a step toward something larger, something brave. She built her music like a sunrise, first dim, then bright, then blinding. Whispers faded, breathing softened, heads tilted forward. Nobody expected this. Arya's hands began to move faster. Her fingers traced the keys as if they were stars she could see. She played not with sight but with memory, mapping the piano through touch and sound. Her body swayed gently, hair falling slightly over her face, expression calm, lost in music only she understood. And slowly, very slowly, the audience fell completely silent. You could hear nothing except the piano, no cough, no whisper, no movement. Even Maestro Brentford leaned forward, arms no longer crossed. There was no blindness now. No laughter, no insult powerful enough to match her music. Her playing grew deeper, like rain falling harder, like wind rising stronger, like emotion turning into thunder. Her small body seemed to glow with something invisible, courage, beauty, truth. She played pain. She played hope. She played everything she could not say. When she reached the final chord, she held it, long, trembling, golden, letting it ring through the hall like a voice made of light. And then she lifted her hands, silence. A silence so heavy it felt like the world itself stopped. No one laughed, no one breathed, no one blinked. The room was stunned by a girl they judged before hearing, by music born from darkness, by a soul brighter than sight. Arya sat still, chest rising with soft breaths, waiting not for praise, not for forgiveness, but for truth. She had played. Now the world had to answer. For a heartbeat, the world stood still. Arya could feel the quiet like a blanket over the entire hall. A silence not empty but full, full of shock, full of emotion, full of realization. It was the kind of silence that only appears when something extraordinary has just happened. She sat motionless on the bench, her hands resting gently on her lap, unaware of the tears shining in many eyes across the room. She could not see their faces, but she could feel their hearts listening. Then it happened. A single clap. Soft, unsure, but brave. Another followed, stronger, louder, and suddenly the hall exploded. Applause burst into the air like a storm of thunder. People stood from their seats. Some cried openly, wiping their faces with trembling hands. Others shouted praises, voices shaking with disbelief and admiration. "She's incredible. I've never heard anything like that. How did we not believe in her?" Arya lowered her head, overwhelmed by the sound washing over her. This applause was different from the one in her dreams. It wasn't polite, it wasn't small, it wasn't charity, it was respect. A deep, honest respect earned with music and courage. Her heart beat fast, not with fear now, but with joy so big it filled her entire body. She couldn't see the audience, but she could hear their love like sunshine. Footsteps approached. Slow, heavy, important, Maestro Brentford. The same man who insulted her. The same voice that laughed at her blindness. The world-renowned pianist who doubted her completely. He stepped onto the stage. The hall quieted again, but this silence was different, softer, warm, expectant. Arya felt him stop a few steps in front of her. She smelled his cologne, heard his slow breath, sensed his hesitation. For the first time since she arrived, his voice was not sharp or proud. It was humble. "I misjudged you," he said quietly. Arya lifted her face, turning toward the sound of his voice. Her expression was calm, gentle, forgiving without needing to say it. The audience watched, breathless. Maestro Brentford continued, his voice trembling slightly. "I thought blindness meant weakness. I was wrong. You play with sight much deeper than eyes. People gasped, some nodded. Others clasped their hands over their mouths, moved by the transformation happening right in front of them. Brentford swallowed, then spoke again louder for all to hear. You are a musician, a true one. And today you taught us all how music should feel. He bowed to her, a famous pianist bowing before a blind girl. The hall roared with applause once more, louder than before, almost shaking the walls with power and pride. Aria's chest swelled, her breath trembled. She felt tears slip down her cheeks, soft, warm, unstoppable. She stood slowly, guided only by her cane and courage. The applause continued as if it had no end. Reporters rushed forward. Cameras flashed, people tried to get close, wanting to touch her hands, to speak to her, to thank her. One woman sobbed, "You changed me today." Another whispered, "You made the world hear what eyes cannot see." Aria's parents were allowed backstage. When her father reached her, he didn't speak. He simply pulled her into the tightest embrace, his body shaking with pride and relief. Her mother held her hand, kissing her forehead over and over. "You did it, Aria," she whispered. "You showed them your light." Aria smiled through tears. "I didn't need to see the world," she said softly. "I just needed to let the world hear me." Maestro Brentford approached her parents and bowed respectfully. "I would like to mentor her," he announced, voice full of sincerity. Shock rippled again, not insult this time, but admiration. A man who once mocked her was now offering guidance not as charity but as tribute. Aria reached out, feeling the space ahead, and Brentford gently placed his hand in hers. She held it firm, not out of dependence but acceptance. From that moment forward, everything changed. The video of her performance spread around the world within hours. Social media exploded with disbelief and praise. The blind girl who silenced the world. A miracle of music. She plays with her soul, not her eyes. Concert halls sent invitations. Music schools requested her. News channels replayed her performance endlessly. People from different countries wrote messages filled with love, respect, and inspiration. But that night, when she returned home, Aria sat again at her old piano, the one that held her struggles, her beginnings, her memories. She placed her hands on the keys. And she played one last song, not for applause, not for fame, not for forgiveness. She played for the little girl who once sat in darkness wondering if she mattered. Now she knew she did, and the world knew it too. The night of Aria's unforgettable performance became the beginning of something she never imagined, something larger than music, larger than applause. Newspapers printed her story the very next morning. Videos of her performance spread across the internet like wildfire. Within hours, millions watched the blind girl who silenced an entire hall. People everywhere cried while watching her play. They called her a miracle, a gift, a soul that speaks in sound. But inside her small home, Aria woke quietly, no cameras, no crowds, just morning sunlight warming the room she could not see. Her piano waited, silent yet familiar. She reached out and touched it, smiling softly. Fame had arrived, but she was still Aria, the girl who played because her heart needed to speak. Her mother hugged her tightly. "Everything has changed," she whispered. Aria tilted her head. "Maybe the world changed, not me." But in truth, both were changing. Not long after breakfast, the phone rang. Her father answered, his voice shaking with surprise. Yes, this is Aria's family." "What?" "A concert invitation in Dubai." Aria paused mid-step. Dubai, a country she never even dreamed of visiting. They asked her to perform as a featured solo artist at a global music ceremony, one that millions would watch live. Her heart fluttered like wings. "But how?" she whispered softly. Her father placed the phone in her hand. A woman with a warm accent spoke. "Aria, the world needs to hear you again." That day, for the first time, Aria realized she was no longer just playing for herself. She was playing for thousands, soon millions. The plane ride. Aria had never been on an airplane before. She felt the hum of the engine beneath her feet, the vibration of takeoff rushing through her body like adrenaline. The world outside her window changed. Though she couldn't see it, she felt it in the way the air shifted, in the way people spoke differently around her, in the way her heart beat like a soft drum of hope. She practiced on a small portable keyboard during the flight, each key a reminder of why she'd come so far. Not sight, not sympathy, music. Rashid, her mentor, joined her on this journey. His calm voice sat beside her like comfort. "You are not a student anymore, Aria," he said. "You are a performer." Aria smiled faintly. "I am still learning," she whispered. "And that," he replied, "is why you will go farther than any of us." Dubai, the stage beyond sight. The music hall in Dubai was larger than anything she had ever imagined. She felt its space through echo, massive, grand, endless. Reporters surrounded her at the entrance. "How does it feel to be blind and brilliant? Are you nervous? What do you see when you play?" Aria answered calmly, "I don't play to see, I play to make others feel." Her words traveled across television screens, social media posts, newspaper headlines. People around the world waited for this performance, a blind girl whose music could stop breath. When she stepped on stage, the air felt bright, electric, heavy with anticipation. She placed her hands on the piano, not shaking this time, but steady, alive. She took a slow breath. And begins. The hall melted into silence again, the same silence she created once before. But this time it was not doubt, it was reverence. Her music flowed like ocean waves, wide, endless, powerful. Notes rose like birds, fell like rain, shimmered like light she had never seen. The audience felt her blindness as beauty, not limitation. They felt her music as warmth, not performance. Some closed their eyes to listen. They heard what she lived, they saw through her. Arya was no longer just a blind girl who played piano. She was a voice, a light, an emotion. She was proof. When the final note faded, the world did not move. Then, a roar. Applause like thunder across the sky. People stood, thousands of them. Some shouted her name, others cried openly. Cameras flashed like falling stars. Arya did not see any of it, and yet she saw everything in her heart. Arya did not see any of it, and yet she saw everything in her heart. She bowed slowly, tears slipping across her cheeks, not sadness but joy, relief, fulfillment. She had touched a world far bigger than her home, far bigger than doubt. Her life had changed. Her music had changed others. And she was only beginning. The world now knew Arya. They praised her, celebrated her, crowned her with titles she never asked for. Genius pianist. Miracle without sight. The girl who plays like light. She returned home with airports full of people cheering her name. Children held signs. Musicians requested autographs. Interviews flooded in. News channels replayed her Dubai performance endlessly. But fame is a strange thing. It fills your life with noise, the same way blindness filled hers with silence. At first, it feels like a dream. Then slowly, quietly, it becomes something heavier. Arya began receiving offers every single day, concerts in Paris, radio interviews in London, a scholarship offer from a top academy in America, documentaries, charity concerts, sponsorships. Everyone wanted something from her, but no one asked what she wanted. Some days, reporters waited outside her house. They took photos, asked intrusive questions. Do you ever wish you could see? Do you feel incomplete? Do you think fame is your only value? Their words pricked like needles beneath her skin. She still practiced every morning, but something was different. Music began to feel like responsibility, not freedom. The piano keys felt heavier, like each note carried the weight of the world's expectations. One evening, while practicing for another major concert, her hands froze on the keys. She felt tired, not in body, but in spirit. Her mother entered quietly, placing a hand on her shoulder. Arya, she whispered, you haven't smiled in days. Arya swallowed, voice trembling. I play for everyone now, she said softly, but I don't know if I'm still playing for me. Her mother knelt beside her, gently guiding her hand to her heart. Your music was born here, she said. The world heard it, but the world did not create it. You did. Arya cried then silently. Not because she wanted to quit, but because she wanted to belong to music again, not fame. Pressure turned into cracks. At her next performance, a grand televised event with thousands watching, she made a mistake. Just one note, one slip of the finger, one tiny moment where her hands trembled instead of flowing. But to the world, it was huge. Critics pointed at it like a stain. Is she losing control? Perhaps the miracle was temporary. Blind genius now struggling. Their words spread faster than applause ever did. Arya felt those sentences like cold hands around her throat. She practiced harder, longer, deeper, desperate to prove she was enough. Her fingers blistered. Her wrists ached, but she pushed herself with the fear of disappointing millions. One night, exhausted, she collapsed over the keys, not physically, emotionally. Her head rested on the piano, shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. The applause that once fueled her now suffocated her. She wanted silence again, not the silence of judgment, but the silence of peace. She whispered into the wood, I just want to feel music again. Rashid found her in the dark. He had been her guide, mentor, believer. He had watched her rise, and now he saw her breaking. He didn't rush to her, didn't ask questions. He sat beside her, waiting until she lifted her head. I failed, she said, voice cracked. No, he replied calmly, you felt. Arya frowned, confused. Rashid placed her fingers back on the piano. When you first played, it was for hunger. When you played again, it was for hope. Now you play for pressure, and pressure has no music. Arya's breath hitched. He spoke gently but firmly. You must return to the reason you began, not to impress, but to express. Her heart stilled. He continued, you don't need eyes to see the piano, and you don't need fame to love it. Silence filled the room, peaceful, warm, full of truth. Arya lifted her hand slowly and pressed a single key. Soft, honest, hers. Not for cameras, not for headlines, just one note for herself. And from that small sound, something returned. The light, the warmth, the girl she was before the world claimed her. She played a simple melody, not perfect, not grand, but beautiful. Tears fell onto the keys, but she didn't stop. Because for the first time in months, she wasn't performing. She was breathing, she was healing. She was Arya again. This was not failure, this was rebirth. And from this softness, this truth, her greatest music was yet to come. In the days that followed, something inside Arya began to shift. The world still wanted her: concerts, interviews, sponsorships, but she no longer rushed to satisfy them. Instead, she woke early each morning, sat quietly at her piano, and played small, gentle melodies meant only for herself. No cameras, no pressure, just music and peace. These soft sessions healed her slowly, like warm sunlight melting ice. One afternoon, while she practiced, she heard faint footsteps outside the window, children laughing. A group from the Blind Learning Center nearby had gathered to listen. Their voices were excited, curious. Is that Arya? The one who silenced the world. She plays like light. When she finished, a small girl hesitantly asked, "Can you teach me to play even if I cannot see?" Arya's heart softened. She guided the child inside, placing her tiny hands on the keys exactly as her mother once did for her. "Don't think of the piano," Arya whispered. "Think of the sound, feel each space, touch the notes like they are stars." The child pressed her first note, shaky, uneven, uncertain, but it was beautiful. Arya felt her chest swell with pride. Soon more children arrived, shy but hopeful. Some blind, some partially sighted, some too scared to dream until now. Arya welcomed them all, guiding each hand, each note, each heart. Moments later, they played together, not a perfect song, but a pure one, a room full of small mistakes that sounded like innocence. No audience, no judgment, just joy. That night, Arya realized something powerful. She didn't just want to perform, she wanted to share. She wanted to give what music had given her: hope, a new dream. Rashid visited that evening, hearing laughter inside her home and homemade music swirling in the air like light. "You found your sound again," he said. Arya nodded softly. "I found my purpose." Rashid listened, saying nothing. Instead, he let her speak, something few adults did. "Performing changed my life," Arya continued. "But teaching, even one child, that feels larger than any stage." Rashid placed a hand over hers gently. "The world applauded you," he said, "but these children will remember you." Her heart warmed. He wasn't asking her to choose, he was reminding her she could be more than one thing. Not just a performer, not just a prodigy. A light, for others still trapped in the dark. "The Academy calls again." Weeks later, Arya received a message from Maestro Brentford inviting her to perform again, this time not for judges or critics, but for young musicians and future dreamers. A charity concert. Funds raised would help visually impaired children receive music education, instruments, lessons, travel support. Everything Arya once struggled for. She felt tears gather behind her closed eyes. This wasn't fame, this was purpose. She agreed immediately. The night of the concert arrived. She stepped onto the stage, not trembling, not pressured, but peaceful. Her heart was calm like a still lake. Because this time she wasn't proving her worth, she was sharing it. In the front row sat her new students, eyes shining though many could not see. They held small keyboards on their laps, fingers ready. Arya placed her hands on the piano and began with a simple tune, the same gentle melody she once played when she felt broken. Then she motioned. The children joined her. Their shaky notes blended with hers, imperfect but golden. The audience listened, some smiling, some crying, all changed. Gorgeous music filled the hall, not polished, but alive with courage, innocence, hope. Maestro Brentford watched with pride reflecting like light across his face. Rashid stood beside him, hands clasped, eyes soft, knowing Arya had grown beyond even his vision for her. She wasn't just a star now, she was a sunrise. When the final note faded, the applause wasn't explosive like before. It was gentle, warm, endless. A wave of love instead of noise. A quiet that spoke louder than thunder. As Arya bowed, she felt something deeper than glory. She felt belonging. Her blindness was no barrier, it was her gift. Her music was no escape, it was her message. Her journey was not just about being heard, but helping others find their own sound. For the first time in her life, she smiled with both peace and purpose. And in that moment she knew, the world can fall silent in awe. But the truest music begins when you help another find their voice. No headings, pure storytelling. Time passed gently like soft piano notes fading into tomorrow. Arya continued performing around the world, not for fame, not for applause, but for connection. Her concerts were not grand displays of brilliance. They were conversations made of sound. Sometimes she played in opera halls, sometimes in community theaters, sometimes under open sky where wind carried her music beyond walls. Wherever she went, children followed, drawn to the warmth in her voice, the courage in her story, the grace in her blindness. They didn't come to watch perfection, they came to feel possibility. Soon, families began to ask her, "Can you open a school, a place for children like you?" The question built inside her like a crescendo. One winter morning, Arya stood inside an empty old church, abandoned, dusty, silent. She placed her hand on the wall and felt the echoes of space. She imagined laughter filling it, instruments awakening it, music painting light across the darkness. She smiled. "This will be home," she whispered, and so it began. Arya opened her own academy, the School of Sound and Light, built not for the sighted or separated children but for everyone. Blind, seeing, poor, rich, none of it mattered. Talent mattered. Heart mattered. The first year 10 students joined. The next 30, soon more than she ever dreamed. Children walked through her doors with uncertainty and left with music. Some trembled when they touched their first instrument, some wanted to quit. Some cried when they failed. Arya understood, she had felt all of it. She taught them not to fear mistakes. Mistakes, she would say gently, are just notes finding direction. And the children believed her because her life proved it. One afternoon, a reporter visited to write about her success. He watched the children learning, laughing, creating music loud enough to touch heaven. Finally, he asked, "Arya, what do you think was your greatest achievement?" She paused, fingers resting on her piano like resting on a heartbeat. "Not silence," she said softly, "not applause. Not fame." She turned toward the sound of young fingers tapping keys around her, unsure but brave. "My greatest achievement," she whispered, "is giving others a reason to play." Her voice trembled with truth. The reporter swallowed hard, unable to speak for a moment. He left with a story not about a miracle girl, but a woman who turned pain into purpose. Years rolled like music, soft and unstoppable. Arya's academy expanded. New classrooms, more instruments, teachers trained in her method, a method built not on sight, but on listening, feeling, breathing. Students grew into musicians. Musicians grew into teachers. Teachers grew into leaders. Her light multiplied. One evening, older now, Arya sat alone at her grand piano in the quiet hall she built from hope. She pressed a single key, gentle, warm, and memories returned like a song. Her first touch of piano wood. Her mother's voice guiding her. The laughter of people who doubted. The silence of the hall when she played. The applause that shook the world. The children who found strength through her. She smiled not proudly but peacefully. Rashid entered quietly. His hair was grayer, his steps slower, but his presence still strong like a steady rhythm. He sat beside her without a word. Together they listened to the calm that filled the room, the same calm Arya once feared but now cherished. "You built something greater than music," he finally said. "No," Arya whispered, "we built it. The world helped. My students helped. Even doubt helped." He turned toward her, voice full as a final chord. "And you helped the world." Arya reached out, touching the keys again. "Not by seeing," she said, smiling faintly, "but by teaching the world to hear." She played a soft melody, slow like memory, sweet like closure. It drifted through the empty hall like a goodbye, but also a beginning, because her music wouldn't stop with her. It lived in every child who learned courage from her hands, in every heart she taught to listen deeper than sight. Arya never needed eyes to create beauty. She needed only truth. And when her final note faded into the air, gentle as sunrise, there was silence again, not the silence of judgment, not the silence of doubt, but the silence of legacy. The kind the world never forgets. The kind the world never forgets.